The dust swirled like a devil's dance as the stagecoach rumbled into Genoa, Nevada territory, in the autumn of 1867, bringing with it Hope Zachary, clutching nothing but a worn leather satchel and the fading daguerreotype of the man who'd promised her a new life. The journey from Philadelphia had taken everything from her savings, her strength, and nearly her faith, but not as much as Edwin Blackwell had taken before she'd fled east. The coach jerked to a halt before the town's only hotel, a two-story clapboard building whose white paint had long surrendered to the harsh Nevada sun. Hope descended on shaky legs, her gaze sweeping the small but bustling mining town. She'd expected her intended, Jacob Keller, to meet her, but the boardwalk remained empty of any man matching the description from his letters. "First time in Genoa, madam?" the driver asked, handing down her trunk. "Yes," Hope replied, her voice barely audible above the sound of piano music drifting from the saloon across the street. "I'm here to meet Mr. Keller." The driver's expression changed. "Jacob Keller? The rancher?" Hope nodded, clutching her satchel tighter. "His place is about 5 miles north. Nice enough fella. Keeps to himself mostly." The driver tipped his hat. "Hotel's right there, if you need a place for the night. Tell Widow Simmons I sent you." Hope thanked him, though her heart sank. She'd expected Jacob to be waiting, as his last letter had promised. Now, standing alone in a strange town with the sun already beginning to set, she felt her carefully laid plans crumbling. As she contemplated her next move, a tall figure emerged from the general store. Broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, he moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. His dark hair curled beneath a well-worn Stetson, and a day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. Their eyes met across the dusty street, and something inside Hope stilled. The man crossed toward her, his spurs jangling softly with each step. "Miss Zachary," he called, his voice deep and resonant. Hope nodded, relief washing through her. "Mr. Keller?" The man's brow furrowed.
"No, madam."
"Name's Josiah Keene. I work for Mr. Keller." He removed his hat, revealing a full head of chestnut hair. "He sent me to fetch you. There was trouble at the ranch." "Trouble?" Hope's stomach knotted with anxiety. "What kind of trouble?" Josiah glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Best we talk on the way. My wagon's just down the street." Hope hesitated, eyeing the stranger warily. Her experiences had taught her caution around men, no matter how forthright they might seem. Josiah must have sensed her unease. "I understand your concern, Miss Zachary. If you prefer, we can speak to Sheriff Holt before heading out. Or you're welcome to stay at the hotel tonight, and I'll return in the morning." His consideration eased her worry somewhat. "No, that won't be necessary. I've come too far to delay meeting Mr. Keller." Josiah nodded, replacing his hat. "Let me help with your trunk." The wagon ride out of Genoa gave Hope her first real glimpse of the Nevada landscape. The setting sun painted the sagebrush-dotted plains and distant mountains in hues of gold and purple. Despite her fatigue and unease, she couldn't help but be moved by the rugged beauty. "It's different from Philadelphia," she observed. Josiah glanced at her. "I reckon it is. Took me time to appreciate it when I first came west. Now I couldn't imagine living anywhere else." "How long have you worked for Mr. Keller?" "Going on 3 years now. He's a good man. Fair employer." Josiah's hands were steady on the reins. "I should tell you, Miss Zachary, Jacob wasn't entirely forthcoming in his letters." Hope's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "The ranch isn't what you might be expecting. It's a working outfit, sure enough, but it's modest. And Jacob." Josiah seemed to choose his words carefully. "He's recovering from an injury. Cattle rustlers hit us last month. Jacob took a bullet to the shoulder. Is he all right? He'll heal. But he's been concerned you might change your mind about the marriage once you saw the reality of life here." Hope considered this. "Mr. Keene, I came west not for luxury, but for a fresh start. As long as Mr. Keller is the honest man his letter suggested, I've no cause for complaint. Josiah nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. That'll ease his mind considerably, madam. They rode in companionable silence as darkness fell. The stars emerged, more numerous and brilliant than Hope had ever seen in the city. She found herself stealing glances at the cowboy beside her, noting the strong line of his profile against the night sky. Mr. Keene, you mentioned trouble at the ranch. What happened? Josiah's jaw tightened. The same rustlers came back. They didn't take cattle this time.
He paused.
Jacob's boy, Timothy, he's 7, went missing yesterday afternoon.
Hope gasped.
His son? Mr. Keller never mentioned a child in his letters. Timothy's mother died in childbirth. Jacob doesn't speak of it much. Josiah's knuckles whitened on the reins. We found signs of struggle near the creek. Jacob's been out searching with some of the hands since dawn. You think these rustlers took his son? Why would they do such a thing? We've had run-ins with them before. Their leader, man called Edwin Blackwell, has a personal grudge against Jacob. Hope felt as if the air had been knocked from her lungs. Did you say Blackwell? Josiah glanced at her sharply. You know the name? Her throat constricted with sudden terror. Edwin Blackwell. Tall man, scar across his left cheek. That's him. How do you? Oh God, Hope whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. It can't be. Josiah pulled the wagon to a halt, turning to face her fully. Miss Zachary, what is it? How do you know Blackwell? In the starlight, Hope's face had gone pale as parchment. She seemed to struggle with herself before answering. He was my husband, she finally said, her voice barely audible. Husband. Josiah's expression hardened. You're married? No, Hope said quickly. Not anymore. Edwin Blackwell was my husband in Pennsylvania. We had a son together, James. Her voice broke on the name. When James was 4, Edwin began drinking heavily, gambling. He became violent. I planned to leave, to take James and start fresh somewhere Edwin couldn't find us. Hope paused, visibly gathering her strength. But Edwin discovered my plans. We argued. He beat me unconscious. When I woke, both Edwin and James were gone. Her eyes filled with tears. That was 3 years ago. I've been searching for my son ever since. 3 years. Josiah's voice softened with sympathy. And now Blackwell has shown up here? Hope nodded, wiping away tears with trembling fingers. If it's the same man. He must have brought James west. My son would be 7 now, the same age as Timothy. Josiah was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. That explains a few things. Blackwell appeared in these parts about 2 years back. He had a boy with him, quiet little fella that didn't much look like him. Claimed the boy was his nephew. That's James, Hope whispered. It must be. And now he's taken Jacob's son too. Josiah's expression darkened. But why? Leverage, perhaps? Or simple cruelty? Edwin delights in causing pain. Hope's hands twisted in her lap. Mr. Keene, I must find him. If Edwin is here, and he is James, we'll find both boys, Josiah assured her, his voice firm with resolve. He flicked the reins, setting the horses in motion once more. But first, we need to reach the ranch. Jacob needs to know what we're dealing with. The Keller ranch appeared as a collection of dim lights in the distance. A modest main house, a bunkhouse, and several outbuildings clustered around a central yard. As they approached, Hope could make out figures moving about, lanterns casting long shadows across the packed earth. A man stepped forward as the wagon rolled to a stop. Despite the darkness, Hope recognized him from the daguerreotype Jacob Keller, though his face was now lined with exhaustion and worry. Any sign of him? Josiah called, jumping down from the wagon. Jacob shook his head. Nothing. We tracked them as far as Miller's Gorge before losing the trail. His gaze shifted to Hope. Miss Zachary? Hope nodded, suddenly unsure what to say. The man she'd come to marry was standing before her, yet circumstances had changed everything. Josiah helped her down from the wagon. Jacob, we need to talk. Miss Zachary has information about Blackwell that changes things. Jacob frowned, his gaze moving between them. What information? Before either could answer, a commotion arose from the bunkhouse. A ranch hand came running toward them.
Boss.
Rider coming in fast from the south. All eyes turned toward the approaching horseman. As he drew nearer, Hope could see he was little more than a boy, maybe 16, his face streaked with dust and sweat. Mr. Keller, he called, reining in his lathered horse. Found something. Blackwell's gang is holed up in the old Sullivan mine. Saw them take the boy inside. You sure it was Timothy? Jacob demanded, his voice tight with emotion. Yes, sir. And there was another boy, too. Older one. Hope gasped, her hand finding Josiah's arm for support. James, she whispered. Jacob turned to her, confusion evident in his tired eyes. Miss Zachary, what's going on? Who's James? My son, Hope said, her voice stronger now. Edwin Blackwell is my former husband. He took our son from me 3 years ago. Jacob stared at her in shock. Your husband? Former husband, Josiah corrected firmly. And now it seems he's taken both boys. Hope stepped forward, her eyes locked with Jacob's. Mr. Keller, I came here to be your wife, but I understand if this changes things. All I ask is your help in rescuing my son. For a long moment, Jacob said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. We'll get both boys back. Josiah, gather the men. We ride in 20 minutes. I'm coming with you, Hope said. Jacob shook his head. Too dangerous. He's my son, Hope insisted. I've searched for 3 years. I won't stay behind now. Josiah stepped between them. Jacob, she knows Blackwell better than any of us. That could be valuable. Jacob hesitated, then nodded curtly.
Fine.
But you stay back when we reach the mine. The Sullivan mine lay in the foothills 10 miles south of the ranch. Once a promising silver operation, it had been abandoned years ago after a cave-in killed 3 miners. Now it served as the perfect hideout for Blackwell's gang. The rescue party Jacob, Josiah, Hope, and 4 ranch hands approached on foot, having left their horses half a mile back to avoid detection. The mine entrance was a dark maw in the hillside, partially concealed by scrub brush. A single lantern burned outside, where 2 men sat playing cards on upturned crates. Guards, Josiah whispered, crouched beside Hope behind a large boulder. We need to take them quietly. Jacob nodded, signaling to 2 of his men. They slipped away into the darkness, circling around to approach the guards from behind. How many men does Blackwell have? Jacob asked Hope. In Pennsylvania, he ran with a gang of 5 or 6, she replied. But that was years ago. We've counted at least 4 since they've been operating here, Josiah added. They watched as Jacob's men successfully subdued the guards without raising an alarm. The way to the mine now clear, the group advanced cautiously. Stay close, Josiah told Hope, his hand brushing hers briefly. The mine tunnel stretched before them, supports creaking ominously overhead. The air grew damp and cool as they ventured deeper, following the faint glow of lamplight ahead. Voices echoed down the passage, men arguing, the occasional burst of laughter, and then, heart-stoppingly clear, a child's frightened cry.
Hope bit back a sob.
After so long, her son was within reach. The tunnel widened into a large chamber where the miners had once worked the silver vein. Now it served as Blackwell's temporary headquarters. Through a narrow gap in the rock, Hope could see 3 men lounging around a makeshift table. A 4th figure paced near the far wall, where 2 small forms huddled together on a pile of old blankets, the boys. And there was Edwin, exactly as Hope remembered him, tall and broad, with the cruel scar that slashed across his left cheek. The sight of him sent ice through her veins. "That's Timothy," Jacob whispered, indicating the smaller boy. "And James," Hope breathed, her eyes fixed on the older child. Her son had grown, his features maturing, but she would have known him anywhere. Her eyes darted nervously around the chamber, wide with fear but dry. He had an arm around the younger boy, who was quietly sobbing. "We need a distraction," Josiah murmured. Jacob nodded. "Anderson, circle around through that side passage. Create a commotion to draw them away from the boys. The rest of us will move in from here." "I'll get to the children," Hope said. Josiah frowned. "That's too dangerous." "They'll trust me more than armed strangers," Hope insisted. "Especially James, if he remembers me at all." Reluctantly, Josiah and Jacob agreed. They waited as Anderson disappeared into the darkness. Minutes later, a tremendous crash echoed from deeper in the mine, followed by shouts of alarm. "Cave in," one of Blackwell's men yelled. "Check it out," Edwin ordered, gesturing to two of his men. Could be that support beam finally gave way. As the men hurried toward the noise, Jacob and his group seized their moment. They burst into the chamber, guns drawn. "Don't move, Blackwell," Jacob shouted. Chaos erupted. Blackwell and his remaining man drew their weapons. Gunshots rang out, deafening in the confined space. Hope darted around the edge of the chamber, keeping low as she made her way toward the boys. James saw her first. His eyes widened in recognition, and for a moment, Hope feared he wouldn't remember her. But then he whispered, "Mama?" "James," she gasped, reaching him at last. "Yes, it's Mama. I found you." She gathered both boys into her arms, shielding them as best she could from the gunfight raging behind them. Timothy was trembling violently, but James seemed frozen in shock. "We're going to get out of here," Hope promised them. "But we need to wait until it's safe." A sudden quiet fell over the chamber. Hope turned to see Blackwell's accomplice lying motionless on the ground. Edwin himself stood with his back to the wall, Jacob's gun trained on his chest. "It's over, Blackwell," Jacob said. "You're going to hang for what you've done." Edwin's eyes found hope, and a cold smile spread across his face.
"Well, well.
If it isn't my dear wife, come to join the party." "Ex-wife," Hope said, rising slowly to her feet, keeping the boys behind her. Edwin's gaze shifted to James. "Taking my son, Hope? Again?" "He was never yours," Hope replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Not in any way that matters." Edwin's hand moved suddenly, and Hope saw the glint of metal. She screamed a warning just as he fired. Jacob dropped to one knee, clutching his arm. Josiah returned fire immediately, his bullet catching Edwin in the shoulder. Edwin staggered, but remained standing. He swung his gun toward Hope and the boys, his face contorted with rage. Before he could fire, Josiah lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The gun discharged into the ceiling, sending a shower of dirt and rock fragments down upon them. The two men grappled fiercely, each fighting for control of the weapon. "Run!" Josiah shouted to Hope. "Get the boys out." Hope hesitated only a moment before grabbing both children by the hand. "Come quickly," she urged, pulling them toward the tunnel exit. Behind her, she heard another gunshot, followed by a pained grunt. She didn't dare look back, focusing only on getting the children to safety. As they reached the tunnel mouth, Jacob's remaining men rushed past them, heading toward the sounds of struggle. Outside, the night air felt blessedly cool after the stifling confines of the mine. Hope led the boys to a safe distance, then knelt before them. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" she asked, examining them frantically. Timothy shook his head, still crying softly. "I want my pa." "You'll see him soon," Hope assured him, turning to her son. "James? Are you all right?" James nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. You came for me, he whispered. I remembered you would. Hope's eyes filled with tears. I never stopped looking for you. Not for one day. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Jacob emerged from the mine, his arm roughly bandaged. Behind him came Josiah, supporting one of the ranch hands who appeared to have been wounded in the fight. Timothy! Jacob cried, rushing forward to sweep his son into his arms. Hope stood, her heart in her throat.
Blackwell.
Dead, Josiah said simply. He won't hurt anyone again. Relief washed through her, followed quickly by concern. Are you hurt? Nothing serious. Josiah's eyes moved to James, who was pressing close to Hope's side. This must be your boy. Hope nodded, placing her hand on James's shoulder. James, this is Mr. Keene. He helped us find you. James regarded Josiah solemnly before offering a small, "Thank you, sir." The ride back to the Keller ranch was subdued. Both boys fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by their ordeal. Timothy curled against his father's chest, while James leaned against Hope, his head on her shoulder. What will you do now? Jacob asked Hope quietly as the wagon rumbled through the darkness. Hope considered the question. Her plans had been upended in ways she could never have imagined when she'd boarded the stagecoach in Philadelphia. I don't know, she admitted. I need to think about what's best for James. Jacob nodded. You're welcome to stay at the ranch while you decide. I know our arrangement has changed circumstances. Thank you, Hope said, grateful for his understanding. And I'm sorry about the deception, though it wasn't intentional. I had no idea Edwin had come west. No apologies necessary, Jacob assured her. If you hadn't come when you did, we might never have found Timothy. Josiah, who'd been driving the wagon in silence, spoke up. There's a small homestead available just north of my property. Nothing fancy, but it's got good water and fertile soil. Could be a place for you and James to start fresh. Hope glanced at him, catching something in his expression that made her heart quicken. That's very kind of you, Mr. Keene. Josiah, he corrected gently. At the ranch, Hope settled James in the guest room that had been prepared for her arrival. The boy fell back asleep almost instantly, his small hand clutching hers even in slumber. Hope sat beside him, scarcely able to believe he was really here, safe at last. A soft knock at the door preceded Josiah's entrance. He carried a tray with tea and bread. Thought you might be hungry, he said, setting it down on the bedside table. Thank you. Hope gestured for him to sit in the room's single chair. How are your injuries? Just scrapes and bruises. Josiah's gaze moved to James. He looks like you. Around the eyes especially. Hope smiled. He has my mother's curls, too. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. I've been thinking about what happens next, Hope finally said. Jacob and I had an arrangement, but circumstances have changed for both of us. Jacob's a good man, Josiah said carefully. He'd honor his commitment if that's what you wanted. Hope shook her head. I came west seeking security, yes, but also a chance at happiness. I don't think either Jacob or I would find that in a marriage of convenience now. Josiah nodded, a hint of something like relief crossing his features. And that homestead I mentioned? It sounds promising, Hope admitted. James and I need a fresh start. Somewhere we can build a life together. It would need work, Josiah warned. The cabins sound but basic. Land needs clearing. I'm not afraid of work. Hope's eyes met his. But I would need help, at least at first. I reckon you'd find plenty of folks willing to lend a hand. Josiah held her gaze, myself included. The weeks that followed were a time of healing and adjustment. Hope and James moved into the homestead Josiah had mentioned, which proved to be a snug 2-room cabin with a good well and 5 acres of land that had once been cleared for farming, but had since grown wild. True to Josiah's word, help was plentiful. Jacob sent 2 of his ranch hands to help repair the roof and porch. The women of Genoa organized a work frolic, arriving one Saturday to help Hope clean, sew curtains, and stock the cabin with preserved foods for the coming winter. And Josiah was there almost daily, clearing land, mending fences, teaching James to fish in the creek that marked the property's eastern boundary. Hope found herself watching for his arrival each morning, her heart lightening at the sight of his tall figure coming up the path. James blossomed in their new home. The frightened, silent boy of those first days gave way to a curious, increasingly talkative child who followed Josiah like a shadow, hanging on his every word. "He admires you greatly," Hope told Josiah one evening as they sat on the porch, watching James chase fireflies in the yard. "He's a fine boy," Josiah replied. "Smart. Quick to learn. He's never had a good man to look up to before." Hope's fingers twisted in her apron. His memories of Edwin are not pleasant. Josiah's hand covered hers, stilling her nervous movement. "Those memories will fade in time. We'll replace them with better ones." Hope asked softly. Josiah looked momentarily flustered, then squared his shoulders. "I've been meaning to speak with you about that, Hope. These past weeks, getting to know you and James. They've been the happiest of my life." Hope's breath caught. "They've been wonderful for us, too." "I know it hasn't been long," Josiah continued, his fingers still warm against hers. "And I don't want to rush you. After what you've been through, you deserve time. But I wanted you to know my intentions." "And what are your intentions, Mr. Keene?" Hope asked, a smile playing at her lips despite her racing heart. "To court you properly, if you'll allow it. To show you and James the kind of life we could build together." Josiah met her gaze steadily. "I've fallen in love with you, Hope Zachary. With your strength, your gentleness, your determination to make a good life for your son, no matter the obstacles." Tears sprang to Hope's eyes.
Josiah.
"You don't need to say anything now," he assured her quickly. "Like I said, there's no rush." Hope silenced him by leaning forward and pressing her lips gently to his. The kiss was brief, but full of promise. "I love you too," she whispered as they parted. "You brought my son back to me. You've shown us both what a good man truly is. How could I not love you for that?" Josiah's smile was radiant. "Then you'll allow me to court you?" Hope laughed softly. "I think we're already well past the courting stage, don't you?" The following spring brought new beginnings. The homestead flourished under their care, with vegetable gardens and a small orchard taking root. Josiah built a larger cabin nearby, with plenty of room for their growing family James, and the baby Hope was now carrying. They were married on a perfect May morning beneath the old oak that stood sentinel at the edge of their property. Jacob, now happily engaged to the schoolteacher from Genoa, stood as Josiah's best man. Timothy, inseparable from James since their shared ordeal, served as ring-bearer. As Hope and Josiah spoke their vows, her hand resting protectively over the gentle swell of her belly, she marveled at the journey that had brought her here. She had come west as a mail-order bride, desperate and afraid, seeking only security for herself and a chance to find her lost child. Instead, she had found a partner, a love deeper than she'd ever imagined possible, and a future filled with promise. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Josiah led Hope to a quiet spot beneath the oak tree. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her. "Completely." She leaned into his embrace. "I was just thinking about that first night, when you brought me to Jacob's ranch. If you had told me then that we would end up here." "Life has a way of surprising us," Josiah murmured, his hand finding the curve of her stomach. "Usually for the better if we're brave enough to face what comes." Hope nodded, watching as James and Timothy raced across the meadow, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. "When I whispered to you that night that Edwin had taken my child, you promised we would bring him home." "And we did," Josiah said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You gave me back my son," Hope said softly. But more than that, you gave us both a home. A real home, built on love and trust. And that's only the beginning, Josiah promised. We have a lifetime ahead to build memories together. All four of us. As the sun began to set over their land, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Hope knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged. Not just in this place, but in these arms, in this life they were creating together. The girl who had stepped off that stagecoach in Genoa last autumn could never have imagined this outcome. But sometimes, Hope reflected, the most beautiful futures emerged from the darkest pasts. All it took was courage, faith, and the heart to recognize love when it appeared even in the most unexpected circumstances.